Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Jay Cohn. Debate underway on the floor of the U.S. Senate as the GOP tax reform bill makes its way through Capitol Hill.
Earlier today, on a 52-48 vote, the tax cut bill passed another procedural vote, paving the way for a final vote, perhaps by week's end. We'll have that story in just a moment, but first we have some breaking news out of Missoula tonight.
That's right. We're joined by Sports Director Scott Breen with some news about a new Grizzly football coach. Scott, what do you have?
Just within about the last 10 minutes, this has been confirmed by 8 sources through Skyline Sports. That's an internet out of Missoula and Bozeman over there with Colton Nuanez, Kyle Sample. They say it's a done deal. Bobby Houck will be introduced as the 37th head coach of the Montana Grizzlies. Of course, I think he was the 33rd head coach there as well. So he's back. He said he wanted to come back, get the band together again, and get after it. So it probably is just pending approval from the Board of Regents. The university has not confirmed or released that. But again, 8 anonymous sources confirmed by Skyline Sports say it is Bobby Houck.
Skyline Sports, the same organization that broke the news that Stitt was being fired. Bob Stitt,
yes,
former coach.
Originally. So they're on top of it, and now we're following it closely, and now we'll post to the web here shortly as soon as we get confirmation elsewhere.
All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, back to our top story in the news tonight. Montana Senator Steve Daines making news earlier today as he announced he will support the GOP tax cut bill after all. If you recall, over the past 2 days, the state's junior senator said he couldn't vote for the bill because it didn't do enough for Main Street.
But Daines' position changed today when some $60 billion worth of tax cuts for Main Street businesses were added to the bill. Daines believes these latest changes will help small business, where a majority of the Montana jobs are created. Now, Daines says, quote, these Main Street businesses will be able to provide more jobs and higher wages in Montana and across the country.
MTN political analyst Dr. David Parker says Daines' newfound support for the bill is not a surprise, but he says his early opposition was a high-stakes game that had the potential to come back and bite him.
We've seen with the Tester election in 2012, Republicans tried to say he was the lone vote that basically brought us Obamacare. You can imagine that there might have been some conservative groups who might have tried to challenge Daines through a primary challenger in 2020 if he had been the, quote, lone vote to scuttle tax reform. It would have been risky, very risky, and that just does not seem to be in Steve Daines' political profile at the moment.
Montana Democrats today quick to criticize Senator Daines. Party Chairman Nancy Keenan says Daines has a, quote, unlimited capacity to stand with corporations and the super rich over helping working Montanans.
Well, Montana State Revenue Director says those federal tax cut proposals before Congress could impact the state budget by as much as $30 million.
That word from Revenue Director Mike Cadis, who outlined those concerns in a memo this week to the governor's budget office. Today he tells MTN News that the proposed Republican tax cuts will likely increase state individual income tax revenue because it eliminates deductions that taxpayers can take.
But he says 2 other components will reduce state tax revenue, including bigger tax write-offs for corporations and a $23 million cut in federal mineral royalties paid to the state. Now, Cadis says he doesn't believe the tax cuts will create enough economic growth to offset the loss in revenue to both the national and state treasuries.
Big concerns about the overall effects of what they're doing. I mean, they're essentially financing tax breaks with deficit spending. You know, we fundamentally disagree with that notion. If you do it, the only time you should do deficit spending is when you're trying to combat a recession situation like that. That is certainly not the case. I mean, the country's at full employment right now.
And Cadis also says it's difficult to truly gauge the impacts of the bills because they're being advanced so quickly.
Well, the Montana State Fund has decided to withdraw its lawsuit against the state over a $30 million charge on the fund's investment holdings.
The fund's board of directors voted 5-2 this afternoon to pull out of that lawsuit. During this month's special legislative session, lawmakers approved a temporary management fee on some state fund investments as a way to help fill Montana's budget shortfall. But the fund's president argued the state fund money can't be transferred for other purposes.
During today's meeting in Helena, a number of business owners called on the board to continue its lawsuit, arguing that allowing this would encourage the legislature to take more money out of it in the future.
But board members who supported ending the suit said moving forward with it would have been too risky.
Cascade County is now the first Montana county to retain a law firm to fight back against the opioid crisis. The Kovacic-Snipes law firm is representing Cascade County in its lawsuit against opioid manufacturers. The suit alleges that the manufacturers use negligent and fraudulent marketing tactics to get those pills on the market. The county is now seeking damages to help with the cost of recovery and the ability to provide more resources to address opioid abuse in Cascade County.
More than 100 Montanans die each year from opioid overdose, from drug overdose. 42% of that is attributed to opioids. It's the #3 leading cause of death in Montana, only behind motor vehicle accidents and suicide. It's a far-reaching economic problem for Cascade County. It affects multiple facets of our county government, and it's really expensive.
Cascade County officials hoping that if successful, this lawsuit will result in additional resources that can help with addiction prevention, rehabilitation, and education.
The dying words of a Crow Agency woman beaten, strangled, and burned alive will be used against her alleged killer at his trial on Monday. 19-year-old DeMarzio Sanchez will be tried in U.S. District Court here in Billings on 1 count of first-degree murder. He's accused in the torturous murder of Roy Lynn Rideshorse, who died in June of 2016. Now, typically, testimony about what another person has said is considered hearsay and is inadmissible in court. But prosecutors plan to use a rule that allows a person's dying declarations be presented. In the 2 months Rideshorse was hospitalized before her death, she apparently gave investigators the description of her attacker and a timeline of events.
Turning to the weather scene tonight, Bob, no outdoor decorations were safe from that wind today. Good Lord.
Oh my goodness, it was just screaming and howling like a big dog out there. We got some pictures of some of the winds. Take a look at this. This is a picture that Jerry Urfer sent us, and this is from his wind gauge at his house. 61.7 miles per hour at 10:20 this morning. Yeah, it was screaming. Other places look like this today. It was very windy. Places like Immigrant had a 67 mile per hour wind gust. Zorky, the same thing, 67. 66 over at Big Timber. Livingston had a 60 mile per hour wind gust. Glendive 59, and here at the Billings Airport, we had a 58 mile per hour wind gust. Now, the good news is the winds are starting to die down tonight. We are expecting another cold front to move in on Friday. We'll have more about what that means for us. Not quite as windy as this next one, but we will talk more about that in a few more minutes.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Another national morning show anchor out of a job today amidst allegations of sexual misconduct.
NBC's Today Show host Matt Lauer ended his Tuesday night without a career after another NBC employee reported inappropriate behavior during the Sochi Winter Olympics in 2014. Now, late tonight, more reports against Lauer emerged.
One of those reports says Lauer gave a colleague a sex toy and an explicit letter detailing how he wanted to use the toy on her. Lauer has yet to comment on the allegations. Just last week, of course, CBS fired one of its morning anchors, Charlie Rose, for allegations of sexual misconduct.
Still to come on tonight's 10 o'clock news, the Dow ended on a high note today. Find out what had investors singing all the right tunes.
Plus, we sit down with the new face of the CBS Evening News. Find out more about Jeff Glor coming up.
And later in sports, Scott visits a hot topic high school golf rule that has Montana parents and college coaches fed up.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm